Hi, I'm Matt from 1password, and I'm here to talk about translating your culture to remote. So I'm Matt, I'm the COO at 1password. I play an active role in a bunch of things, but mainly product design. But the culture here is really important to me. I've been here 7 years and watched it grow from 24 people to 220, and from a largely consumer product to being loved by businesses and enterprises, and really focusing on the broad spectrum of anyone using it, from individually to a family to in a team or in the entire business. And we've changed a lot in the last 7 years, and that includes internally, but our focus has really remained clear, and that really helps us keep the product on track and keep what people know us for being the forefront of what drives us. So I think the first thing to address is that we made this choice to be remote, as many others probably watching this have. But many people didn't, and this is a time where we are in a constant state of an emergency, a stressful emergency, and culture is hard to prioritize, but it can also bring your team together, which when making the transition to remote, those connections can seem really strained. This time means everybody is incredibly stressed, under pressure, and in an environment that likely isn't set up for remote. And that people's kids are at home, and it's generally not a work environment. So this is not normal, and nor is it really remote working. It's socially isolated, state maintained quarantine. And I think sometimes the people who are already remote forget that a little in the effort to show everybody that how great remote work is. So take all this with a pinch of salt, that really helps show that your company can thrive at being remote, even though it might not be doing so at the moment. So 1password has been remote for 15 years. We have 2 offices, but do operate in a remote way. Being remote is actually a lens to look at your culture. And I think that's an important fact, because it's really important that being remote doesn't become your culture. It has so many effects on your product, your brand, your people, that creating a culture should be what guides your company, and what you create. It shouldn't be just where you're located or how you communicate with each other. And everything that I want to talk about is specifically how we do things at 1password that guide our product, our people, and our brand. I'm also looking this through the lens of being pretty senior in an organization. But when I started at 1password, I was a designer, and I couldn't make sweeping changes. There are still things that you can do to help your workplace move to remote, regardless of your position or process. So with that, number 1, look at the natural places your team get together. So all of these points are about watching your team, really, how they interact, the processes, and then trying to strengthen and straighten up where the current communication happens, and kind of improving both the communication and the culture. So like what they're talking about, how your team acts, as well as where and how they're communicating. So making these, looking at the natural places that your team gathers, and making these smaller communities, whatever the size of your organization is, even if it's 5 people, what the people are talking about in various like water cooler areas, making those dividing those shared interests and making them smaller communities, means bringing people together that might have not interacted before in a place like the water cooler, and it allows people to come together that have never worked together before. So at 1password, we have natural gathering spots. To us, this looked like people talking around a topic like books, music, or gaming. And so it meant building out these channels in Slack helping those passionate about that topic create events for them, structuring really what was naturally occurring, and helping make that the normal. And I think that's really helped. We have a channel for books, and they feel empowered to have a monthly book club or share what they're reading. Whereas in something like the water cooler, where everything happens, it is really difficult to continue a topic of conversation. So number 2, reaffirm the inside jokes and make them inclusive. So every company has inside jokes, the office memes, the funny gifs. The important thing is to make them inclusive of the whole company, or a whole team within the company, and obviously not toxic or offensive. Once you identify a meme or an internal joke, like one internal to us is that our CEO really likes to share 1 million charts. So every time we jump on a call or an all call within the company, everybody is ready and kind of raring for him to share a 1 million charts, and to criticize that there wasn't enough charts in this call, or this is a 6 out of 10 call because of the number of charts. All these things help bond on an all call, and it helps bond your team towards something. These inside jokes can really help. Reaffirming these when growing as well really helps a new person feel included. So making the origins of these part of your onboarding, making it part of your process, these are the fun elements of your company that people will really remember. So as you grow and as you move through these, and as jokes get old, keep the onboarding updated, and people love referencing them and being like, I saw this weird thing in the onboarding, can anybody tell me about it? Or I saw this weird thing in your internal documentation, or anything like that. Being clear or upfront about it makes the jokes inclusive. It doesn't make new people feel like they're left out. And referencing them as well when you make internal documentations and communication for your company, like where it's appropriate, joining in on these in things like all company emails and as I mentioned, all calls. It makes the company seem a little flatter. It makes the broad spectrum of people that you have at your company feel a bit more included in one kind of shared joke. So number 3, make your culture things that inform your product. So your culture does inform your product. It just does. What you prioritize as a company and what you prioritize as kind of a group of individuals in the way that you think, it affects the work that you do and the goal that you move towards. So, for 1password, the first 2 things that are important to us and we stress internally are also the 2 things that inform our product the most. So security and privacy. Our product is trusted because these are the things in the conversation of any feature or in any marketing activity or in anything that involves any shred of customer data or has the possibility to have security vulnerabilities or anything like that. Security and privacy are included in the conversation from day one because, this is what our customers hold most importantly. And I think, what you have to do is work out what that is for you, and more importantly, what it is for your customers. Try and angle your inside values with your customer. It sounds obvious, but making the thing that you strive for and bring up first in every meeting being worth $1 billion, it means that you crap on every customer you have to. You have to get there and will likely be roasted in the process. It means that you're not taking into consideration every time what your customer wants out of this. It's making your company almost self-centered. So number 4, document everything. This is important for an office-based company, but it's even more important being remote. Internal documentation is so vital for so many things, but also for culture and persistence of those things that make your company individual. If the best thing, according to your team before all this, was the fact that they would meet up at 3 p.m. for tea and biscuits or movie nights or anything like that, when a new person joins, they get inducted into this by the very nature of attendance. But when you're remote and attendance isn't possible, you have inclusion another way. Internal documentation of your company's rituals and processes means that anytime, anywhere, people can look them up. Make it part of your training too. When we teach customer service and we build the guide that we detail what we think is the best answer to any question raised by a customer. Really, the thing that we're trying to get across there is how to answer a question like that and how you should act. And kindness being one of our things that we strive for towards customers. We make that apparent in every single email that we send. So number 5, culture at scale means understanding the smaller groups and the bigger picture. So as we've been growing and evolving, obviously the culture grows and evolves with it. Guiding that comes by hiring the right people. But there's more that you can do with culture at a scale. Firstly, as I mentioned before, it comes by looking for smaller interests and communities within your company. It also comes in your operations and policies. Everything aligns to these principles that you set. And monitoring your company's culture remotely and at scale are two things that really set against you. You can't have everyone in one room as often as you would like, and so it means monitoring these things are much more difficult. But it also means that you have more data about what makes up your company, so it might be that you can check on your team in other ways. A survey is a great way of doing this. Know your company has some, or know your team has some great tools in order to continually ask questions and continually get this kind of pulse of the company. But also a survey by your team leads have a great meaning to this as well. And having a team culture that is slightly different than another team is totally okay, as long as they kind of interact and communicate with each other. It just means that when cross-functional teams happen and they kind of divide up other teams, it might be a bit jarring for how people work. But we find that separating and having individual cultures in between in cross-functional teams just helps bring smaller groups of people together. As long as those overriding thoughts and directions are really set to your major principles that you set as a company, I think that's absolutely fine. So, number 6, share in success and be open around concerns. Especially in a time of crisis, being open around concerns and sharing in success together can help this feeling of isolation. If you're new to remote, you likely have this persistent feeling of being out of the loop. Like you're the last one to know something. You're being left out on a call of a project, and suddenly you get a DM from the boss saying, "Can I have 5 minutes?" And you instantly think this is the end of everything. That kind of openness in terms of success means that those things are a lot less surprising, and you don't feel that kind of being out of the loop, that FOMO, as much. At 1password we have monthly all hands calls, but at the moment we actually have one every other week. to go through what's happening to the entire company, successes, concerns. It almost it makes people feel part of the entire organization, but also comforted. It's a point of comfort at a time where we don't have much, and everything is pretty fast moving. So with that, I wanted to share with you what we internally believe are the values that drive the culture at 1password, the things that are important to us. So let's look at this simmered down version of the culture at 1password and what kind of guides us. So the first two here, and I'll just read them out: security, privacy, kindness, and community. So the first two here are what drives our product. People trust 1password because it's secure. People trust 1password as a company because it's private. We don't track you around the internet on all kinds of adverts or use your data in our marketing. Like, these two feed into everything and the way that we do things. And then when we look at something like kindness, this is what informs our customer service, which is almost as important as the product that we build. It's the people that are using it and the way that we help them and communicate with them. It's so important to us to help our customers and that everybody has a good interaction with us. And then community to us has two meanings: both the community externally that we contribute to and we help, but also our communities internally to our company. So those are the things that are important to us. We've spoken about things that are that people have the ability to add tools and add processes to control and to help with these elements. And I think as you come to make the things that guide you as a company and the processes that do really help, it's massively helpful to make these more concrete than thoughts and feelings and aspirations to move towards. Security is something that you can absolutely impose. You can absolutely check the box off every conversation that you have. Whereas, something that might be a little lighter, a little unsure of how it comes to terms, it might be a bit more difficult to impose or guide. So when we return to the before, these points might help you transition a little easier towards working remotely, but it might also change this whole thing, how you work. When returning to life before coronavirus, when the world comes back to being a bit more of what anybody would call normal, hopefully the world will see a little less need to be in the office every day. But I also think that these things could strengthen your culture and make it a little more clear, even in an office environment. So hopefully some of this has helped, and hopefully you can implement this in your own working environment. But hopefully you can just monitor your own company a bit more and your own team, and look at where people are gathering and look at what makes them happy and add a bit more of that, because in the kind of world that we're living in at the moment, everybody could use a little bit more of that. So thanks very much. I'm Matt Davey on Twitter, and you can follow at 1password too. If you or your organization don't use a password manager, during the coronavirus crisis, we have removed our trial and made our product free for 6 months of using it. So the next time you need to access something securely with your team, just sign up for an account and share it how you need to. So yeah, take a look at 1password.com. And thanks everybody for having me. I think there will be comments or something down here. Thanks. Magic. Look at that. So what tools do you use to create natural gathering spots for your teams? So I think there's two parts to this question. One is kind of where people generally seem to gather in tools, and then the other part is how you bring those work tools to hold them on, right? So we found that people who were sporty or wanted to track runs or something like that was happening in something like Strava or a Runkeeper or all of those type of things. And so we noticed that we had people there. And so we noticed that, being fit and healthy and away from the keyboard and kind of exercising was important to our team, right? So when you join 1password, you actually get a surplus amount of money. Oh, hello. You actually get a surplus amount of money every month to become fit and healthy away from the keyboard. We literally call it healthy away from the keyboard. And yeah, it's we kind of improve that natural gathering spot by adding a bit of money to encourage people. But in terms of tools, I would say that it's nice to kind of find people in those areas and then use something like Slack or use something like Basecamp and really kind of add that formality into the work process of being like, oh hey, there's people talking about my topic in my work environment. I feel at home here. It's putting those things together. What are shared norms or behaviors that are counterproductive with remote work? How to phrase this nicely? The over communicative people. So the people that will ping 3 people because they didn't get an instant response, or the people who will join day 3, have 5 Google Docs with hundreds of pages of information, and then just kind of pass it off to you. And I think people don't really see that behavior as counterproductive in kind of a normal process orientated business, because like when you leave somewhere, you have all of this knowledge and you're like, right, I'm going to write all of this down for my new company and it's going to be great. But then what you realize is, especially at 1password, we're very kind of doing people. If you come in with just a strategy and no kind of plan of actually implementing that, or the strategy is so high level that there's kind of no one underneath you to actually do these things, it's then really difficult to actually move that forward, which means that it's kind of wasted time and very counterproductive. So yeah, I would say that kind of behavior, especially the people who kind of need an answer to a question and ping 10 people in order to get one answer, that's really counterproductive. What's the next one? How do you foster a culture where working for objective is key rather than install this monitoring software? Several companies are moving into a big brother monitoring of their remote employees, which is inevitably going to lead to toxic remote environments. This is a big topic in the security industry at the moment, is enterprise security versus personal privacy of your employees. Managed devices and managed networks and all of this stuff just really, like, they're not working, right? When you get a mobile phone from your company, you generally have to then carry 2, and then you do the old, I'm going to answer this work email using my personal phone with a personal email. So it's very difficult to kind of for companies to accept that those two are merging. This laptop that I'm working on, it's my laptop. I have company stuff running on it, but there's no monitoring software on it. Just because, by the time you monitor devices, there is such a bleed over from personal privacy to, anything. So yeah, it's a really key thing. Fostering a culture of
like not doing that really comes from like making it very clear inside your company what these things actually do. For example, there's a thing called a CASB, which is pretty awful, and it basically it's a net that catches all traffic from all devices that you have installed on there, and so it's really grotesque. And being open and saying this is not good that that you treat people like this, and kind of involving management in that decision, I think is incredibly important. I say this from a point of management, but if someone brought that up to me that, hey, like I'm really uncomfortable with this thing, I would be very actively listening to that. Okay, apparently we only have one more time for one more question. What tools do you use for documenting your processes, and who's taking care of it? So when we were smaller, we had like a community editing type thing where, if you noticed something that was wrong, you would go in and just edit it and fix it. And this was okay till about 50 people. 1password is now 220 people, and 220 people all doing the process of editing and randomly, grabbing documents, etc. just doesn't work. So the people who actually write the documentation for the software now handle the documentation internally for 1password. We have some kind of HR people that handle specific pages of that and templates, but overall it's the people that document 1password.